And with that, we can officially go ahead and get started with today's webinar. We are talking about deploying NinjaOne MDM. I've done many MDM webinars over the years, and usually we're trying to cover the full suite of NinjaOne functionality, everything that the product can do and can make better about your IT environment. But we always end up with a lot of questions on the very first step of getting started with an MDM, which is how do you actually get your devices deployed and get them enrolled? With MDM, there are a lot of caveats. It's not really as simple as it might be for a Windows device or a Linux device where you just install the agent and then you're good to go. With MDM, there are different types of enrollment. There are different methods of management, and there are trade-offs, there are caveats, there are pros and cons to the different styles of management. And that can be a lot to cover in a webinar where we're also trying to talk about what the product can do. So in this one, we're almost wholly focused on just the basics. How do we actually get devices into NinjaOne in as quick and as streamlined a manner as possible? There will be some slide deck today, just because it's the best way to sort of articulate all the different types of enrollment methods. And we're going to bounce back and forth between the PowerPoint and the actual NinjaOne platform so you can see how everything actually operates. And as such, I did want to inform you that I'm going to be doing my demonstration from the Canadian instance of NinjaOne. We have these regional instances that you can see here on the screen. And when we launch new versions of NinjaOne, we do stagger those rollouts. And so we're starting in Canada and the OC, the Oceanic instance. And so on November 11th, they received the 11.0 upgrade. Tomorrow evening, or actually maybe this evening, I would expect the EU to get the upgrade. And then in December 3rd and December 10th, we will see US2 and US1, aka the main North American instance, receive the 11.0 upgrade. And so this is a little bit of a sneak peek because I will be referring to some features, or really one specific feature, during today's webinar that you may not have in your environment. And I'll point that out once we get to it. But just in case what you see on my screen looks a little different from what you see in your screen, you are probably like me. You are in the United States or on a United States instance, and therefore you're not going to see it's not going to look quite the same in your instance as it might look like in mine. And I'll be very clear here when I point out the one specific feature that I'm talking about that you may not have access to, but everything else you should all have within your environment. But there's sort of a feature relating to Android deployment that you may not have when we go into the demonstration portion here. So our agenda today is to talk about how we can get your devices enrolled in NinjaOne MDM for Android, how we can do that for iOS and for iPadOS, and then finally we'll talk about the macOS side of things and how you can deploy your devices through macOS MDM, or get your devices enrolled in macOS MDM is, I suppose, more grammatically correct. And then, of course, we will go ahead and cover any questions. I expect we'll have plenty of time for questions. So if you want to get it, please get your question in. Please use that question and answer section. And as we go through everything, if I am unclear or you just want to see something again, make sure you let me know. I am more than happy to be directed remotely by anybody in the Q&A so that we can make sure we cover what is most useful for you. Now we're going to start with Android and how we can enroll Android devices into NinjaOne. There are three main methods of enrollment in terms of how you can bring devices into the platform. The very first one would be considered a BYOD model, or bring your own device. And so in this scenario, an employee might be bringing in a device to an organization, and that device has their photos on it and their contacts, and they use it to text message people, and they have their own applications that they want to be able to leverage on that device. But for whatever reason, there might be a need to use that device in a work context. And so what Android allows you to do is essentially separate the personal and the work usage. The phone is still under control and belongs to the end user who owns it. But we can create a separate work profile upon enrollment into NinjaOne MDM so that the work data is completely siloed from the personal data. So the end user is still able to do all the things that they would use their phone for normally, but the work data is separated from that personal data. And so you're able to go ahead and control the work profile settings, and if you need to remove access to that work data, when you erase the device, you're erasing only the work profile that is on that device. So that's a great option because BYOD is a flexible option. It can be good for many organizations, based off of what their particular needs are. But there are other types of enrollment as well. And so the second type of enrollment is one that I am myself very familiar with. It's company owned, personally enabled, or COPE. And so what this means is that the device is owned by the company. It belongs to that company, and they have ultimate ownership over the device. However, there is an expectation that that device is going to be used for personal functions in addition to just work functions. So this is sort of the inverse of bring your own device. It's almost like the company is loaning you a phone a little bit. And so while they retain ultimate ownership of the phone, they are delegating the ability so that you can still use the personal functions of the device. So kind of an inverse of that bring your own device model. Again, something I am familiar with because for many years, that's how I worked. I didn't actually have my own personal phone. I just used the work phone that I was given because that had been assigned to me, and the company that I worked for was more than okay with me using that for personal usage. So I'm very familiar with that type of enrollment. The third type of enrollment is going to be dedicated for a device, a dedicated device for your work or for a particular job function. And so in this case, you're not using the device for personal usage in any way, shape, or form. This should only be used for work. And so this could again be a device that is dedicated to a particular person, but more likely it's going to be something that's dedicated to a specific purpose. And so in this case, I'm thinking of the perhaps the tablets that a server might use to remotely take somebody's order and relay that to the kitchen or to the bar in a restaurant. Those are MDM devices that I have managed in the past. They could be ticket kiosks. All they do is interface with end users or really customers who are using that kiosk, and then they're spitting out tickets or scanning barcodes. Warehouse inventory scanners would be another sort of dedicated device here. There's no expectation that you're going to be leveraging this for personal usage in any way. That should not be allowed. We expect this only to be used for a dedicated work function. So those are the three main types of enrollment. Let's talk a little bit about the caveats here. What do we need to be aware of when we are bringing devices into NinjaOne MDM? And so let's talk about the process. What are the actions that we're actually taking here to bring these devices into the platform? And again, what are the caveats? What do we need to be made aware of so that this process goes as smoothly as possible? So for starters, let's say we're doing the bring your own device model. I have my Android phone. I need to enroll in NinjaOne MDM because that is how I'm going to get the work applications so that I can complete my job duties. And so what I might do is I might have a QR code generated and emailed to me. And so we'll take a look in a little bit about how easy that can be. And so as that QR code is sent to me, all I need to do is go ahead and open up the Android device policy app. I can scan that QR code, and then I'm going to be able to do the self-enrollment right there. And that process, just by taking my phone, scanning that QR code, enrolling in NinjaOne MDM, I'm still retaining ownership of the device. All my personal data is not going to be impacted by that, but I am going to be able to receive the work applications that have been assigned to me from NinjaOne MDM. I'll be able to access that work data and that work application in a safe manner so that if I ever leave the company or my device is lost, the employer is able to go ahead and say, hey, let's erase that device so we don't have any data that's compromised in the field. If a device is, again, stolen for whatever reason, you have that ultimate protection there about the work data not being compromised. Now, the benefit of this is that there's no factory reset required. This picks up midstream. All that data that's on my phone, again, my family photos, my contacts, all that stuff still persists. That's still in my phone. However, we're just adding on that work profile so that that data is siloed, it's separated, it's segmented. Whatever your favorite S word is for, keeping things separated like that, feel free to use it. But that's what we get with that BYOD model. The second option we see here is for the COPE enrollment or the dedicated device enrollment, kind of the wholly work-owned enrollment. You could also do that using a QR code, but do it locally on the device. Now, the this probably doesn't sound tremendously desirable as a process because it's manual. It's something you have to do per device in this workflow that we're discussing. And of course, you do also have to factory reset the device. When we are doing company owned, personally enabled, or the dedicated device for work enrollment, in both cases, you're not able to pick up midstream in the same way that we did with the BYOD model. For both the COPE enrollment and the dedicated device enrollment, you have to do a factory reset on the device, or the device has to be fresh out of the box from a reseller, or just fresh out of the box. And at that point, you're able to go ahead and tap 6 times on the screen. Again, just straight out of the box. You can go ahead and power on a tablet or phone, tap 6 times on the screen, and it's going to go ahead and open up the camera so that you have the ability to scan that QR code and enroll that device. Uh, Now, again, that doesn't sound particularly fun, right? That is a manual process. That is a per device process. I have 100 devices. I would have to do that 100 times if I was using this particular method. So let's talk about something that's probably a little bit more desirable, and that is going to be the same style of enrollment. So the COPE enrollment or the dedicated device enrollment. Uh, However, we can do that through some sort of out-of-the-box provisioning process, some sort of out-of-the-box experience. And so one of them might be zero-touch enrollment, which is sort of the whole umbrella under which Google allows you to do zero-touch enrollment. That's the method that's through Google. And so this works well. However, I'll say it has a limitation in that with the zero touch enrollment from Google, as far as I know, that is only supported if you are purchasing your devices through a reseller. The reseller actually has to be the one to upload those devices to Google so that you can do the whole zero touch enrollment workflow. You're not going to be able to just purchase devices online from maybe a not authorized reseller, from Best Buy, something of that nature, and then upload them into zero touch enrollment so that you can get that experience. You have to purchase them from a authorized reseller who is going to do that upload for you. To my knowledge, there's just no way to do that outside of that reseller function. However, there are other out-of-the-box experiences that exist through the different OEM manufacturers of the device. And so one of them, KME, this is probably the single biggest one just in terms of global footprint. And this is Knox Mobile Enrollment. So this is the Samsung out-of-the-box experience. And so with this, if you have Samsung devices, you can absolutely go ahead and set up the automatic enrollment of your devices through Knox Mobile Enrollment. So this way you have that total ownership and any devices that are factory reset or are fresh out of the box and are in Knox Mobile Enrollment, they will go ahead and dictate the enrollment in NinjaOne MDM. And so this, I think, is a very good option here if you have Samsung phones. And I'll show in just a bit, we've got pretty explicit instructions on how to go ahead and set this up through Knox Mobile Enrollment. However, just because Knox Mobile Enrollment is the probably the biggest one that I'm aware of for Android, aside from, of course, Google's Zero Touch Enrollment, uh, we also have other ones for other manufacturers. And I think my ultimate point here would be whatever manufacturer of a device that you have, there is a fairly good chance that there is some sort of out-of-the-box experience that they support that allows you to do this functionality, to go ahead and do the enrollment in NinjaOne MDM. And so for something like Elo View, for something like Stage Now from, I believe that's Zebra, these are inventory scanners. These are rugged tablets that are designed to be kind of beat up a little bit. You can go ahead and use the out-of-the-box experience from those OEMs to go ahead and get this zero-touch enrollment process. So you are not limited by, if you're not buying from a reseller and you can't use the zero-touch enrollment, Don't worry, you can still use the OEM out-of-the-box experience. It just requires that you know what devices you have under management, and then understanding how you can actually implement that zero-touch experience. And with that, let's go ahead and actually take our first dive into the NinjaOne portal and take a little bit of a look at what this is going to look like. So right here, I'm in the main NinjaOne portal. I'm going to go to administration on the left-hand side, and then I'm going to go into my apps exchange. This is where I would turn on NinjaOne MDM for either Android right here or NinjaOne MDM for Apple, which we'll take a look at in just a little bit. So for now, I'm going into Android. Now, right here, I would need to do my Android enterprise setup right here. And this is a prerequisite in order to actually enroll your devices in NinjaOne MDM. This is something, if you're using Google Workspace, you can use Google Workspace to set up this Android enterprise connection. If you are not using Google Workspace, just a regular old Gmail account absolutely does work. Of course, I would recommend that you follow your internal processes if you're on an IT team for an organization in terms of making sure that that credential is stored safely in a place where other team members can access it. And then if you're a managed service provider, this is something where I would recommend that you coordinate with your clients to have them create this Android enterprise account. So it's under their control. Obviously, you want to have individual Android enterprise connections for your various clients if you're an MSP. It's probably not something that you want to do to go ahead and have everybody under one bucket. I generally would recommend that you'd want to create separate Android enterprise connections for your various clients that you would have as an MSP. So once you get that set up, you would be able to enroll devices in NinjaOne MDM. However, we've got some other options up here, and this is the other options I mentioned earlier that you only get with the 11.0 release of NinjaOne. So there's a possibility that if you're not on, or I should say, if you're in the EU or you're in the United States instances, you're probably not going to see enrollment profiles right here, and you're probably not going to see zero touch connections. That right there is the bit that comes in 11.0. I think everything else I show here today is something that you'll have access to, but this is the one bit here that you might have to wait a couple weeks for in order to take full advantage of. So let's go ahead and look at this. We'll look at zero touch connections first. This is very easy. Go ahead, add in your zero touch connection right here. You need that enrollment token that we see right here. Again, to take advantage of the zero touch connections that we see in this particular menu right here, this is something that is only going to be beneficial for you if you are purchasing your devices from a reseller. The reseller is going to be able to add add those devices to Google's zero touch workflow, and then those devices would be automatically assigned into NinjaOne whenever they were factory reset, whether that's when they're initially out of the box and it's first being set up by a user, or if it's factory reset in the future. And so this is where we would set this up right here. Again, because of the reseller limitation there, I'd say this is not going to be a silver bullet. It's not going to be something that you can use maybe across all devices. Again, if you have that relationship with a reseller, you're already doing that workflow, this could work great for you. But if you have a more fragmented ecosystem in terms of the types of devices that you are purchasing, if you don't aren't purchasing from a reseller, you don't have that comprehensivity there, we can instead do something a little different. We would go and we would create an enrollment profile here. Now, the enrollment profile isn't strictly necessary. We give you these three out of the box, which just correspond to the enrollment types I mentioned earlier. Right here, allow personal usage. This is the BYOD method. This right here is the COPE method. And then this right here would be the dedicated device for work method. So this is whole company ownership of the device right here. So we give you these three out of the box, but we also, as of 11.0, allow you to create additional enrollment profiles. And so what this allows you to do is to predefine certain aspects of the profile to help streamline the onboarding process. So right here we have our profile name, what is our Android enterprise connection, what's the location here, the time zone that they should be on. We define our usage type here as well. Again, BYOD, COPE, or dedicated device. We can set when our token is going to expire, or in this case, it's never going to expire. I could also do the one-time only token if I wanted to. I can establish my provisioning settings. So as this device is being enrolled, do I want to allow system applications as this device is being brought online? Do I want to use a mobile network? Do I want to allow offline provisioning if I don't have a network connection? Skipping encryption, keeping the screen on, skipping education screens. All these options right here I can control by virtue of the QR code or the enrollment profile that is being used. So I can define the settings right here, and then I could go ahead and actually uh, create this QR code, create this token, and then put that into Knox Mobile Enrollment. This is also useful for Wi-Fi settings if you're doing something where you want to ensure that the device is going to have network access via Wi-Fi. We would go ahead and we would establish that right here, add in our SSID and our wireless password right here. And so as we enroll this device, it's already going to have the Wi-Fi password available so that it can then reach the network. And so this is really valuable for your device onboarding, your device provisioning. It prevents you from having to go through that manual process of adding in the Wi-Fi credentials so that then the device can go ahead and complete its journey in an automated way by receiving the policy that comes from NinjaOne MDM. So we have that right there. Let's say we would create an enrollment profile, dictates our Wi-Fi settings, any of the other onboarding settings that we want to configure. Now I'm going to switch over here to a Dojo article, and I'll post this Dojo article in the chat just in case anybody needs a quick link there. And so this is an example of how we can go ahead and take a token from NinjaOne MDM, take that enrollment profile, and then push it through a separate service. In this case, the Knox Mobile Enrollment, the KME, doing that through the out-of-the-box experience, the zero-touch provisioning for any Samsung devices that support this. And so if we go down here, this walks through the entire step. This is what you're doing inside of Knox right here. And then right here, we can go ahead and create the actual deployment of NinjaOne MDM. Right here, you can see the DPC extras field. You would need to go ahead and paste in your code. And you can see right here, it says enter your token. And so what we would need to do is go back into NinjaOne, go up to the top right, add a device, add a mobile device, and then for our Android device, I can say for Herrera Technologies in the Austin office, let's go ahead and do COPE enrollment right here. And so at this point, I haven't set an enrollment profile. You can see that I still get the ability to set my token expiration, my provisioning settings, and my Wi-Fi SSID right here. I haven't selected an enrollment profile, so none of that is being passed. If I wanted to pass this information, I would need to go ahead and configure that enrollment profile so all of this information was included with the actual profile, and I wouldn't have to have that separate step, kind of a step 1B in between step 1 and step 2, where you have to manually do the connection to the internet. Again, assuming that this is like a tablet or some device that doesn't have a cell service to the internet. And so at that point, I can generate the QR code right here. This is the token. So what I've highlighted right here beneath the QR code, this is the token. You do have the option here of copying the entire DPC payload in JSON right there. And then I can go ahead and add that in. You can see everything in here, all the code, but this is just saying what all the settings should be. What I really care about in terms of the token is, well, that's the checksum. But what I really care about in terms of the token is going to be further up here. But you can skip all that and just copy the code right there. Now, again, you could send this to your end users right here. You can see I just add them in right there, and this would be sent out via email. Again, this is really only going to be useful if you're doing BYOD, because otherwise they need to factory reset the device to get either COPE enrollment or the dedicated device enrollment. But right here, you can see for a personal device, we can go ahead and send out these QR codes. They can self-enroll Or in this case, we can see we're doing a company-owned enrollment. So we could go ahead, factory reset the Android device, tap 6 times on the welcome screen, and then you scan the QR code. And again, this applies to phones, it applies to tablets, it applies to kiosks that are running Android, it applies to any inventory scanner or warehouse scanner that's running Android. If it supports Android Enterprise, if it has the Android Device Policy app on it, you can enroll in NinjaOne MDM. And this is, again, something I have experience with. These devices are everywhere, and they are only going to continue to grow. Kind of came up when you thought of them as a phone or you thought of them as a tablet, and it was generally in the possession of a human being. That is not the case anymore. These tablets kind of form the backbone of so many different functions across so many different parts of enterprises. They are quite literally everywhere. And so you have all the different options that you need, the different styles of enrollment in order to get these devices under management in whatever form is appropriate. And again, we've seen now that based off of the different enrollment profiles, you're going to want different types of ownership and different enrollment methods depending on the particular problem you're trying to solve. Whether it's BYOD, whether it's company owned but allowing the end user to still do some personal usage, or if you want that dedicated device wholly owned method of operation so that you can go ahead and control a kiosk, control those inventory scanners, any of those dedicated devices that aren't going to belong to a specific end user or person. I do see a quick question, a few questions here, so I'll go ahead and try to get to these. Matthew says, what happens if you have a Wi-Fi password change on a schedule? Will you need to modify the setup profile manually, and will you need to address the Wi-Fi password on a deployed device separately, like make the user update the password? So this is a really good question. Thank you very much for this, Matthew. So you would need to change the Wi-Fi profile in this method that we see right here. So the enrollment profile, you would need to go ahead and change this right here for any future deployments that you wanted to occur. However, you can go ahead and change the Wi-Fi password via policy. So once you have the devices inside of NinjaOne, this part's really easy. We just go into our Android policies right here. We can go to the network, and then we can add in the new Wi-Fi network or change the password that we see right here. So it's very easy to do for devices that are inside of NinjaOne already. Make the change here. Everybody then gets the new password, and you don't need to go and hand out the password to everybody or require them to enable it. However, for the new devices that would be onboarded, you do need to go ahead and periodically change that Wi-Fi password or use a guest network. This, I think, is the type of method that we use here at NinjaOne. We have multiple Wi-Fi networks, one of which is a guest network that, we're a little bit more lax on the password changing while still preserving our production network and making sure that that is still nice and secure. So yes, I think you've got some options there, Matthew. I hope that helps. Maurice says, are you able to enroll in NinjaOne Android MDM and also use another MDM such as Workspace ONE Mobile Connect? They require the use of Workspace ONE Mobile Connect for M365 services, but in the past have had issues using this with another MDM. Would you face the same problem with NinjaOne Android MDM? The answer is probably. And so that is because the nature of MDM is that there can only be one. It's a little like Highlander. You can only have one MDM in charge of a device. And this really applies across Windows, across macOS, across iOS, iPadOS, and for Android. So to my knowledge, you can only have one MDM installed. And if you're using Workspace ONE, there's just not the possibility for that device to also be enrolled in NinjaOne MDM. One thing I would say is that you can use something like the Quick Connect feature. So right here, I have Quick Connect. You can see my iPhone right here. This would also apply to Android devices as well. And so this is attended access. Somebody has a problem. They need help. They call you up and you say, hey, go ahead and download the NinjaOne Assist app. Go ahead and give me, actually, you would give them the code. So we would go ahead and come in here. There's the permit invite. There's the code. I would say, go ahead and type in this code right here. And at that point, I would see the device in this portal and I would be able to connect to it. And the nice thing is, if you are on Android, I believe you would have the ability to also control the device as well through Quick Connect for so you can actually click on the screen. And so that's a really nice option there in case you need to help remotely support devices and still retain Workspace ONE. Um, so yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Maurice. Oh, Quick Connect is an additional license cost, Maurice. So if you reach out to your account manager, they can let you know what it is. I forget. I think we basically say you get an average of two connections for the month, I believe. I apologize. I'm not a licensing person, so I would recommend talking to your account manager. From my understanding, it's very reasonable. Larry says, do you need to have MDM enabled to use Quick Access or Quick Connect to connect to iPhones? Absolutely not. Quick Connect is entirely separate and it is not contingent on NinjaOne MDM in any way, shape, or form. Yes, Philip says his audio cut out. Does Quick Connect work for Apple devices? It absolutely does. Windows, macOS, iOS, or iPadOS, and Android devices all support Quick Connect. I'm not certain if we've gotten around to Linux quite yet, but we will get there. In the interest of time, I see I have more questions here, but I do want to make sure I get to everything else. So I do promise I will get to your questions in a little bit. So keep them coming, but I want to make sure I do cover the iOS and the iPadOS side of things as well. So let's go ahead and move on to this. Let's talk about iOS. Let's talk about iPadOS, switching gears from the Android side. With Apple, you get different methods of enrollment. They do not follow the same process that Android is going to follow. And so in this case, your methods of enrollment really boil down to two. Do you have unsupervised access of the device or unsupervised management of the device? What this means is that you are scanning the QR code, you are downloading the enrollment profile on the iPhone or on the iPad, you are enrolling in NinjaOne MDM, and the benefit of this is that there's no factory reset required, much like bring your own device in on the Android side of things. Now, however, this does mean that there are some limitations in terms of what you as an administrator can control on the device, and I think most crucially, the profile, the MDM enrollment profile, that can be removed locally. So if somebody says, I don't want my device managed anymore, they can do it. And there's nothing that you can really do about it as an administrator when you have unsupervised management of the device. And these terms, unsupervised and supervised, this is how Apple refers to the methods of management for iOS and iPadOS. So all this is to say is that unsupervised is rarely desirable. You know, you probably want to have supervised access if you own the device. Unsupervised is again sort of a bring your own device equivalent. And so it gives you that ability to manage the device, but you are limited because you are not the owner of the device. You know, technically, when you're having a device in unsupervised management, it still belongs to the end user. They're the ones who are going to have ultimate control over the machine. Now, supervised access does give you whole work ownership of the device. You completely own that device. However, it does require a factory reset at the initial MDM enrollment. So if you are enrolling in an MDM for the very first time, that device does have to be factory reset. The benefit is that you get total ownership of the device. And so you can see this through line here between Android and iOS and iPadOS for complete ownership of the device for either dedicated device enrollment or COPE enrollment on the Android side or supervised enrollment on the iOS side. You do need to have a factory reset occur, sort of brand new device. That's when you're taking over from scratch. That's the methodology that these two developers are following here for MDM. So let's talk about the process here. How do we actually get these devices into NinjaOne MDM? And so our process here is kind of similar to what we see on the Android side. We can do self-service. You can send somebody that QR code. You can send somebody that enrollment profile. They're able to go ahead and download that profile on their device, enroll. However, when you do it in that manner, that self-service method, you are only getting unsupervised access. You cannot scan the QR code locally on the device in a way that is going to give you supervised access of the machine. It just doesn't work that way. In order to get the supervised access, you have two options. You can use Apple Configurator. And so you actually would need, I think, a MacBook, or you would need the iPhone app for a configurator in order to actually enroll your devices. That's a manual process. Again, not ideal. I won't spend too much time on that simply because I doubt that you really want to do that. The other method is Apple Business Manager. And so the way that this would work is as you purchase devices from Apple, those devices go into your Apple Business Manager account. When they are in your Apple Business Manager account, you are able to define an MDM server like NinjaOne. And so as those devices are purchased, an end user gets it, they go through the setup, and part of the out-of-the-box experience that they have to do is enroll in an MDM. They don't have a choice. If they want to use the phone, they have to enroll in the MDM that has been specified. And so this is what's known as automated device enrollment from Apple that works via Apple Business Manager, and that funnels all of your devices into NinjaOne MDM. So that right there is the process. I imagine that for most enterprises, whether you're internal IT, working for an internal IT team, whether you're a managed service provider, I think that having devices in Apple Business Manager is the best, easiest, most streamlined way. It's the ultimate goal that you probably want for any devices that are owned by either your organization or by your client's organization if you're an MSP. Now, one thing I will say here is that if you are the process of acquiring an Apple Business Manager account can take a little bit of time. So if you are, again, working for an internal IT team at an organization, they may have an Apple Business Manager account. If not, you can sign up for one. You will need the DUNS number, DUNS number, in order to set up that account. And you will have to go through some sort of verification process from Apple in order for them to confirm that you're a valid business before you actually get that ABM account. So that can take a little bit of time if you do not already have an Apple Business Manager account. Again, for your organization, if you are working internal, if you're working for an internal IT team, this is where you would start. This is the process that I would recommend everybody start right now, because as you can see, it does take a little bit of time in order to complete the process of the catch, so to speak. If you are an MSP, if you create an Apple Business Manager account, you want to put your devices that are owned by your managed service provider company, your business entity, you want to put those in there, but you do not want to put your client's devices under your Apple Business Manager account. Technically, that is a violation of Apple's terms of service, the terms and conditions. They want your clients to have their own Apple Business Manager account and then have the MSP added as an authorized user of the client's ABM account. So if you are an MSP, I would not recommend creating an Apple Business Manager account and then bringing all of your various clients into that. You want to work with your clients to have their Apple Business Manager accounts retain ownership of these devices, and then you want to leverage the tokens from those various Apple Business Manager accounts to have everything funneled into NinjaOne so that you as an MSP have the central view of all your various clients and all the devices that they have. But that's just a little bit of legalese that I want to make sure everybody is aware of here. So right now, we're talking really about having to factory reset a lot of devices in order to get them into NinjaOne. However, recently, as of a couple months ago, Apple has done us a really big solid. They have launched a new feature, a migration feature, so that if you have devices that are on the OS 26 operating system, they changed their numbering convention this year. So now both macOS and iOS and iPadOS, they're all going to follow a year naming convention. So OS 26, 2026 OS. That is what is going to allow you to do the migration. So your devices do have to be on the latest version of the operating system, latest major version of the operating system. And so what that allows us to do is migrate them from one MDM to another MDM. Now, if you do not have devices managed by an MDM today, this does not do anything for you. The device has to already be enrolled in an MDM. In order for this migration to work seamlessly. But let's say you are using something. I heard somebody say Workspace ONE earlier. If you're using Workspace ONE You have all your devices on OS 26 and you want to migrate to NinjaOne. The process is as simple as going into Apple Business Manager, right-clicking, and migrating the devices over to your new MDM, hopefully NinjaOne. That you would you define a particular date by which the migration has to occur, and that is going to be enforced locally on the device. There will be a little pop-up message saying, "Hey, your device is going to be switching MDM providers." Uh, so yes, this is a far, far better workflow now today than it was even 4 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, because at that point we would be talking about completely resetting everything and then bringing devices into NinjaOne and kind of starting from scratch. This is the big benefit of this is if you have devices on OS 26, if you have these devices enrolled in another MDM, you have them enrolled in Apple Business Manager, you get this capability to easily migrate everything over to NinjaOne. Now, one thing I would say here, just as a word of caution, this does work. And so, because it does work, when your devices move over to NinjaOne, they would then be subject to the policy that you've set up within NinjaOne. So, I would recommend doing plenty of testing here to validate that when you migrate a device from your other provider into NinjaOne, that it works the way you expect, that your policy settings in NinjaOne match what are in your other MDM. So this way, you don't have people saying, "Well, I lost all my applications. Now I can't, communicate with things that I used to be able to communicate with because I have different restrictions in place on the device." So you do want to ensure before you conduct the migration that you have evaluated all your settings in the previous MDM and you have transferred all those settings over into NinjaOne MDM. And you would want to test a device first to ensure that there's no catastrophic loss of data or interruption of service that is just going to make your life a lot more difficult. So with that, let's go ahead and dive back into the demonstration. So we're back in the NinjaOne portal. Let's go to administration and then apps, and then we'll go into the MDM section right here. Now, the APNS right here, the Apple Push Notification Service, you do need to go ahead and set this up before you can do anything. You do not need to have an Apple Business Manager account for this section. I think I did set it up with an Apple Business Manager account, but you don't need to have one for this section. That being said, I think that I've made it pretty clear here that having Apple Business Manager is probably the long-term goal here. That is the end goal that I think anybody who's managing Apple devices should work towards. If you can, you want to have everything managed. And in Apple Business Manager, it is going to save you time and make your life a lot easier in the long run. Now, after we set that up, we would also want to set up our automated device enrollment token. And so this is the token that is going to allow us to actually funnel devices from Apple Business Manager into NinjaOne MDM. Once we set up this token here, any devices that we point to NinjaOne MDM in Apple Business Manager, we'll see these here as synced devices. I think I'm having a bit of an issue with my token right here. I need to go ahead and renew it or maybe accept a new EULA update inside of Apple Business Manager to turn this healthy again. And so once I do that, I would see my devices that have been synced over from Apple Business Manager into NinjaOne. We also have the apps and books tokens. So if you needed to do any content delivery of private applications or just wanted to automatically push applications without the need for an iCloud account or Apple account to be signed in on the device, this is how we would accomplish this particular workflow. And again, using Apple Business Manager, you get the capability to do the migration. And so that is going to really make things a lot easier for you in the long run. You do, again, have the ability here to go ahead and do the QR code. But again, remember that this is only going to be unsupervised access. I would also point out that while Android has the silo of work and personal data, it doesn't really work the same way with Apple. And so there really isn't a silo here. With an unsupervised device, you are still basically erasing the entire device whenever you erase it. So there could be a loss of data on the personal device. I do believe that if you're using iCloud, you should be able to, like an iCloud backup, you should be able to restore to that. I have done that in the past with an MDM device where I've restored my personal data. So Yes, that should be still an option for you unless they have changed something since the last time that I had an MDM enrolled device that I used on my personal as my personal device. So let's go back into the deck right here. And let's switch gears to talk a little bit about macOS because this is very similar, but I also think that this is way easier compared to iOS and iPadOS. So for macOS, how are we enrolling our devices here? We have what we've talked about previously with iPhones and iPads. We have automated device enrollment, the ADE. So in Apple Business Manager, I can go ahead and say, hey, as I purchase these devices, go ahead and automatically enroll them in NinjaOne MDM so that as the device is set up, somebody opens up their new MacBook, they are enrolled automatically in NinjaOne MDM. It just happens, as a part of the process. This is why I say that I think the end goal for most people, anybody who's managing Apple devices, you almost certainly want to have Apple Business Manager because it's going to do things like this, which makes your life a lot easier in the long run, saves a lot of time, and streamlines a lot of your processes. However, if you need to do this per device, you can. So right here, we can go ahead and do a manual deployment per device. You just need to go ahead and download the MDM enrollment profile, double click it, say, yes, I want to go ahead and install this profile, and then you are good to go. You have access to the device. There's no factory reset required. Um, Now, of course, this is a manual process, which isn't fun, and it also means that the profile can be removed locally. So somebody would have the ability to go ahead and remove that profile on the MacBook if they decided that they didn't want to be under management anymore. So that again is why we like the Apple Business Manager and ADE method of enrolling devices because they cannot remove it when we use this method. They can only remove it when we use the per device method and we install that profile locally. So let's talk about another option here. This is what I call the middle ground option here. And this happens a lot for people who might not have their devices enrolled in an MDM at all whatsoever. But they may have been using the NinjaOne agent for remote access and for patching and for remote troubleshooting. So the devices have an agent on it, but they're not MDM enrolled. So let's say we want, but they are in Apple Business Manager. So let's say we have these devices, they're in Apple Business Manager, they're not managed by an MDM, but we do have the NinjaOne agent in place. What we can do in this workflow, we set up the automated device enrollment, and then we can actually remote into the device. We run a terminal command. That terminal command is going to pop up the setup assistant, the out-of-the-box experience on Apple. And so you're actually able to enroll in supervised, company-owned enrollment, uh, ADE enrollment on the device without a factory reset. All you need is the remote access, the device in Apple Business Manager, the device pointed to an MDM via ADE, the automated device enrollment. And when you run that terminal command, it checks in with Apple Business Manager and says, oh, I'm supposed to be assigned to this MDM, and you'll be enrolled in that MDM with no factory reset required. So really the per device option here, I would say is probably not going to be used by you in most cases. You're probably going to use the automated device enrollment right here via Apple Business Manager. And so this is for any new devices that are being provisioned. And then for any devices that you have access to remotely, but maybe don't have enrolled in a DM already, you're going to be able to access the device remotely, run that terminal command, and then the device will be enrolled in Apple Business Manager, or I should not in Apple, in NinjaOne MDM by virtue of doing that setup assistant right there. And I will also mention the migrations that we talked about earlier, migrating from one MDM to another MDM. That also works with macOS. So if you have your devices in another MDM already and they're in Apple Business Manager, you can go ahead and you can do that migration process for macOS just like you can with iOS and just like you can with iPadOS. This method right here, the bottom bullet, this is really for when you have the NinjaOne agent installed on the device, but the device is not already in an MDM. So you have a lot of different options here that I hope are going to be effective for you. And before we go too far, I wanted to actually show you what this process is going to look like. Here on a MacBook, we have a video where we're running this command. This command is going to be located in the YouTube description, and I'm going to go ahead and add the video in the chat as well. You can see once that command runs, I have to go ahead and do my setup assistant, type in my password, and then we're installing the enrollment profile. So again, right here, there's a manual intervention here for sure, but there's no factory reset, and we're able to get that fully supervised, company-owned aspect of the device where the enrollment profile isn't going to be able to be just ad hoc removed at any point in time just because the end user feels like it. We're going to have that ownership of the device. And with that, let me go ahead and start taking some questions. I think we have about 7 minutes left. All right, so I see Nick has a question, says some MacBooks should be enrolled in Ninja via MDM. So you have two options there. Let's actually go into the console. When you enroll a MacBook, you would enroll a computer under Mac, and we have a couple options here. DMG and PKG, this gives you only the agent. So this would give you the real-time troubleshooting. It would give you remote access. It would give you the AV integration deployment capabilities. However, Apple is moving more towards where they want your devices to be patched, your MacBook devices to be patched via MDM. So in order for you to effectively patch your devices, I would say you want MDM enrollment. And so when you use the MDM enrollment profile method right here, this is going to enroll the device in MDM and also deploy the agent. So you get the best of both worlds. You get all the speed of the agent, you get all the configuration capabilities of an MDM, and so you get the best of both worlds the way that I see that. So yes, if you, in my opinion, I think that MacBooks should be enrolled using MDM. This gives you the ability to control device configurations and deploy patches. It also gives you the agent, which gives you all the speed and the real-time troubleshooting capabilities and the remote access, and software patching as well. So yeah, I think you get the best of both worlds there. However, if you are already tied to an MDM for some period of time, having the agent in place only is absolutely a viable option that does give you the remote access, the remote troubleshooting tools, software patching, AV deployment capabilities, and a whole suite of other stuff. But yeah, I would say, Nick, that in my opinion, I think you're best suited by having devices MDM enrolled because that gives you everything. It gives you the agent, it gives you MDM. That is the most future-proof option, the way that I see it. Um, Richard says, is MDM included as part of our agent count cost? Is there a separate charge? There is a separate charge for MDM, regardless of whether that is MacBook MDM, iOS or iPadOS MDM, or Android MDM. If you reach out to your account manager, they can give you all the various pricing and SKUs. But yes, that is going to be a separate charge for that. Nathan says, on a BYOD setup, if a device is compromised via malware, would the business profile side and data still be safe, or would it be compromised as well? Uh, I would assume that there would be some encryption in place here, but I would say in this particular example, the point of the BYOD setup is that if the device does get compromised by malware, you're able to effectively erase just the work data on the device. So I really can't say for certain if that would be compromised or not. I think it might depend on the level of compromise on the device. But there is encryption in place here. And there are adequate controls in terms of being able to eliminate the data remotely if you need to. If your customer is sorry, Jacob says, if you're a current customer of Jamf for Apple devices, can it be a struggle transitioning over to Ninja MDM? No, assuming that you have your devices in Apple Business Manager, essentially what you would do is you would just do the migration through Apple Business Manager to NinjaOne, and that is really it in terms of the process. I say that the biggest amount of time that you would need to spend is in validating that your settings in Jamf are what you want the settings to be inside of Ninja, or maybe I said that the wrong way, that your settings in NinjaOne match what you previously had in Jamf. That's probably going to be the single biggest time sink for you, just because before you do 100 devices, you want to do one and you want to make sure that it does it the right way. But yes, with this new OS 26 migration piece, this significantly streamlines the process of transitioning from one MDM to another. And I know that there have been several many people I've spoken with who have transitioned from Jamf. So I do not see that being an issue. Matthew has an Android MDM question. Can you use profile for end user device, no personal use allowed to simplify the user experience? We find our users get confused with the multiple work and personal profiles. We work around this by using the profile mentioned above and allowing apps like Samsung Gallery manually. Yeah, that's absolutely something that you can do. You can also, again, if you wanted to eliminate the profiles completely, you could do the dedicated device and it would just be set up per what you specified. And then you could go ahead and manually allow system apps like Samsung Gallery. So yeah, I think both of those should work for you, both no, end user, no personal device. And the way that I am envisioning it, I would think that the dedicated device option would work for you as well, which you can see right there. Andrew says, can we restore from an iCloud backup after using supervised enrollment? I believe you can because I am almost positive that I have done it in the past. I had a supervised enrolled iPhone. It was in a different MDM. This is a while ago, several years ago. Won't say how many. Uh, and that is, I did, had a brand new device. I knew it was enrolled in MDM, and I was able to go ahead and restore from an iCloud backup and get everything that I needed. Again, that information's a few years out of date, so I would say I think you can still do it, but there's always the possibility that Apple has changed something on me and I did not notice. So if anybody else has any advice on that, I would love to hear from you. Just to confirm, Michael says, if I'm enrolling a device purchased from a third party and not through a vendor associated with ABM, do I still have to use Apple Configurator? Uh, so yeah, if you want to, my assumption here is that you want to enroll the device in ABM so that you can then have it funnel into NinjaOne. You would use Apple Configurator for that process. Um, yeah, so yeah, you would need to use Apple Configurator if you do not have a vendor who is uploading those devices into ABM. Now, of course, if you don't want to use ABM, you can just directly enroll the device in NinjaOne MDM. But again, I think you're better benefited by in the long term having ABM in your ecosystem. I know I'm at time here, but I see a lot of questions, so we're going to keep going for a little bit. If you guys have the capability of staying a little bit longer. Larry says, if we have Macs and iPhones that were not purchased through our ABM account, can we still use Apple Configurator to wipe the device and enroll the device as a supervised device? Again, they were not added via our ABM. Yes, you should be able to do that. You might need to use Mac Configurator, so you might actually need a MacBook. I don't know that I've actually done it with an iPhone directly, so you might need to use some sort of MacBook or Mac Configurator in order to enroll the device as a supervised device, but it should be possible. Maximilian says, is there documentation for Apple Configurator? Did I understand correctly that it only runs on a Mac? So there's Configurator for iPhone, which you can use for enrolling devices in ABM, and then there's Mac Configurator on a MacBook, which is what you would use, I believe, if you wanted to enroll the device supervised without the need for Apple Business Manager. So unfortunately, there are multiple types of configurator, and they do different things. So you would need Mac configurator in order to do the supervised enrollment without ABM. And then I would use configurator for iPhone in order to take devices and enroll them in Apple Business Manager. That's what I do with the phones that we see in this demo environment is I will use my phone to link them to ABM so that I can then do the automated device enrollment into NinjaOne. Andrew says, do we still have the option to wipe an unsupervised iOS device in the event of a theft or loss? Yes, you do. Abraham says, is there any way of migrating data from an already company-owned iPhone, not an ABM, not NinjaOne, to a brand new enrolled Apple device? As far as I know, the only way to accomplish that would be through iCloud backup. And Larry was very helpful in posting documentation on configurator in the Q&A, so I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat as well. Keith says, Android devices. They are a point of sale company, and Android devices are more of a kiosk company owned device. When will unattended access to the device be available? I think we're looking at that for the first half of 2026. So yeah, Keith, we're sooner rather than later on that. John says, where do you set up the supervised or unsupervised device? And so that is actually determined just by the method you actually enroll with, John. So if you are enrolling through automated device enrollment and Apple Business Manager, that's going to be supervised. If you're just installing the profile locally on the device, that's going to be unsupervised. So it's not really a toggle. It is determined by the method through which you enroll into an MDM. Keith says, can you run an automation script on the Mac with the agent already installed in order to do the enrollment without reset, or does it still require a hands-on? So no reset required, but you do have to be hands-on because the command that we saw earlier, that opens up a wizard, and the wizard has to be like clicked through, and you have to enter a password. So yeah, you can't run an automation script to do the MDM enrollment. It does require hands-on, but the benefit is that you don't have to reset. So the hands-on element, I know it's really kind of a pain to coordinate with end users, believe me. But it really should be you saw that was about a 40-second video. So I would say maybe about a minute per device is absolutely something that is feasible in my experience for enrolling devices in the manner that I showed earlier. But again, remember that that method is contingent on you already having the device in Apple Business Manager. Tony says, is there zero touch deployment possible for Mac and PC using Ninja? So for macOS, absolutely. We can use this automated device enrollment just like we would with an iOS or an iPadOS device to, go ahead and enroll in NinjaOne MDM as soon as the device is provisioned. And then you can have a whole bunch of stuff occur on your macOS devices like this. I have scheduled automations so that as my devices are onboarded, I'm enabling firewalls and I'm changing the sleep settings and I'm listing browser extensions, installing applications, doing whatever I need. So absolutely for Mac. For PC, uh, it, it's absolutely possible, assuming the device has the operating system already installed on it. So, for example, right here, I would have my Intune integration. And so, as I have devices joined to Intune through Autopilot, something like that, as they are provisioned, this is just going to go ahead and allow me to run a job to easily deploy to my devices. So, yeah, it's not quite zero touch because you do have to manually hit the run option here. Uh, it'll be automated starting in the 12.0 release. Um, but yeah, this would be the same thing. This would deploy the NinjaOne agent, and then at that point, you can go ahead and have a whole bunch of scheduled automations run to configure your device and set up the application and do all of that. It's probably not going to be until next year, maybe the 12 or the 13.0 release, where we're going to have some type of uh, you sign in with your Entra credentials and that automatically installs NinjaOne, kind of without the need to do anything through autopilot. You know? So we are headed that way, Tony, but probably not quite zero touch on PC today. Um, but yeah, absolutely zero touch on Mac OS, 100%. Assuming you're buying them through ABM or having them added to ABM and funneled into ADE. George says, is there a way to add devices on Apple Business Manager without having to purchase a device from Apple or a reseller? So you absolutely can do it. Any Apple device, regardless of where you purchased it from, as long as didn't buy it off the back of a truck. Uh, any of those devices, you can just use the configurator app on your iPhone, and you can go ahead and add them into ABM. I don't believe there's any sort of bulk upload, so it is kind of a manual process. But it is absolutely possible to add devices to ABM without going through a reseller, but there is going to be a level of manual effort there in order to have that happen. Sebastian says, let's say Verizon auto enrolls iPhones for ABM. Will this affect anything in terms of adding those devices into NinjaOne MDM? No. So this sounds great. You have Verizon auto enrolling iPhones into Apple Business Manager. What you can do is go ahead and say, well, these devices are going to be automatically enrolled in NinjaOne MDM, and then they're going to appear inside of the NinjaOne platform. So that sounds like that would be ideal, honestly. As you purchase devices from Verizon, they go to ABM, and in ABM, you have a setting saying, hey, my MDM server is NinjaOne. And so they're just going to automatically funnel through automated device enrollment into NinjaOne MDM. And I will go ahead and drop a link in here just so you can see what this workflow is going to look like. There we go. Last question from Nick. Do you have any recommendation on managing Apple accounts for iOS devices? Currently, my company has users creating personal Apple IDs using their work email for iCloud backups. Just wondering if that could be an issue with NinjaOne MDM or if there's a better alternative. I don't think it's going to be an issue with NinjaOne MDM. And I can't think of a better alternative. So I will say that, yeah, that sounds like a perfectly cromulent idea, Nick. That's probably the immediate solution that I would arrive at as well. But I'll maybe talk to some people internally and see if they have any other thoughts. But I think right now that's probably the best idea. I'd have to check. I don't think you can use federated Apple IDs like through Apple Business Manager in order to do iCloud backups. So I'll check on that. But right now, that seems like that's probably the best solution, Nick. I apologize for running over. Uh, Thank you everyone for attending here today. You will receive an email with the recording sometime tomorrow. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. My email address is jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. Thank you all for staying a little bit longer, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Take care.